It was a storm, unlike any the valley had seen in years. Rain came down in thick sheets, blurring the world into shadows and noise. Wind howled through the trees like a restless spirit, bending branches and scattering leaves across the empty roads. In the middle of it all, trudging through the mud, was a young woman, soaked, shivering, and lost. Her name was Grace. She had no umbrella, no clear destination, only a suitcase dragging behind her and clothes clinging to her body like a second miserable skin. Her hair, once neatly pinned, now curled in damp strands around her pale face. Her eyes, once bright, looked hollow, as if they'd run out of tears. She had run from a mansion, a life of silk and silver, of forced smiles and suffocating expectations. Run from a wedding dress picked out by someone else, a fiancé chosen not by love but by legacy. Grace had traded opulence for obscurity, status for silence. And tonight, she was paying the price. She didn't see the small cabin until she was nearly on top of it, its windows glowing like eyes in the darkness. Her knees buckled just as the front porch came into view. With a final, desperate gasp, she collapsed onto the wooden steps. The door creaked open. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, and weathered. His eyes, the color of forest bark, narrowed at the sight of her. Rain splattered against his boots as he stepped forward, crouching beside her without a word. He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. He simply lifted her in his arms and carried her inside. His name was Ethan Carter, a single father, a quiet man. A man whose past was buried beneath years of silence and hard labor. He lived alone in this cabin with his 7-year-old daughter, Liam. Together, they built a small, humble life out of solitude and routine, far from the noise of cities and people. That night, Ethan laid Grace gently on the couch, covered her with a thick blanket, and stoked the fire until its warmth filled the room. Liam peeked out from behind the doorway, eyes wide. "Daddy, who is she?" Ethan's voice was low, a stranger, but she needed help. Grace awoke the next morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of bacon sizzling. Her head throbbed, her body ached, but the soft crackle of the fireplace and the thick wool blanket wrapped around her made her feel something she hadn't felt in days. Safe. "I'm sorry," she murmured, sitting up as Ethan approached with a mug. "I didn't mean to intrude." He handed her the coffee. "You collapsed. I wasn't going to leave you out there." Liam approached with shy curiosity. "What's your name?" "Grace," she said, forcing a smile. Ethan didn't ask why she was out in the storm. He didn't press her for answers. He simply offered her one night's shelter. But the storm didn't end. The winds howled for 2 more days, trapping Grace in the cabin. And in those days, something unexpected began to happen. Grace and Liam bonded, not with words at first, but with simple things. Drawing with crayons, playing board games, making pancakes. Grace laughed for the first time in weeks when Liam smeared syrup on her nose. Ethan noticed. He watched Grace from across the room as she gently brushed Liam's hair, as she hummed softly while washing dishes, as she stood outside in the mist, eyes closed, face tilted toward the rain. There was something in her, something delicate and fierce, like glass forged in fire. She never spoke about her past, and Ethan didn't ask, but secrets have a way of revealing themselves. One afternoon, Liam was rummaging through Grace's coat when she found a necklace, delicate, golden, engraved with a name in elegant script, Grace Rose Duvall. Ethan froze when he saw it. That name? He recognized it. The missing heiress. The runaway daughter of Charles Duvall, the billionaire hotel tycoon. Her photo had been on the news for weeks. She had vanished days before her high society wedding, and no one had heard from her since. Grace saw the look on Ethan's face. She didn't deny it. "Yes," she said quietly. "That's me." And so she told him the truth. She told him about the life she had left behind, the dinners she had to smile through, the people who called her a porcelain doll, the man she was supposed to marry to merge fortunes, not hearts. She told him about the nights she cried herself to sleep in the gilded cage, longing for something real, something true. She didn't want to disappear. I wanted to be found, but not by them, not for that. Ethan listened in silence. When she finished, he said only, "You must have been very lonely." She nodded, and something inside her cracked. But instead of pushing her away, Ethan simply said, "You can stay a little longer until you're ready." They fell into a rhythm. Grace helped with chores, read bedtime stories to Liam, made pancakes with Ethan, though she'd never fried an egg before in her life. One crisp morning, the rhythm shattered. A car pulled up outside the cabin. A black car. A man in a suit stepped out. Older, dignified, with eyes sharp as polished stone. "Miss Duvall," he said, bowing slightly. "Your father sent me. He's worried sick." It was her butler. The only man in that mansion who had ever treated her like a person. Grace stood frozen. Her heart felt like glass in her chest. "I don't want to go back," she whispered to Ethan that night, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Not really, but I can't stay either. Not forever." She hugged Liam tightly. The girl clung to her with all the silent love a child can carry. The next morning, she left. Ethan didn't stop her. He stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, watching her car vanish into the mist. Life returned to normal. Or something like it, but it was quieter now, emptier.
Ethan still chopped wood, still made breakfast, still tucked Liam in at night. But something had changed. There was a space at the table, a silence in the air. And in a penthouse miles away, Grace sat in a room filled with roses and regrets. The chandeliers didn't shine the same. The silk sheets didn't warm her. The golden halls echoed with loneliness. She missed Liam's laugh, Ethan's quiet eyes, the scent of pine smoke and pancakes. She missed being needed. A year passed. Then, one spring morning, Ethan found an envelope on his doorstep. No name, no note. Inside was a deed to the cabin, renovated, paid in full, and a tiny heart carved into the bottom corner of the page. A week later, Grace returned, not in a limo, not in designer heels, just herself. She stood on the porch, heart pounding, suitcase in hand. Ethan opened the door. His eyes widened, then hardened. "You think you can just walk back in?" he asked. "No," she said softly. "I don't expect anything. I just needed to see you, to see if there was still space for me here." Ethan looked past her, to the trees, to the sky, to the ghosts he'd buried. Then he said, "You left." "I know. and I'll leave again if you say so, but I had to come back and say thank you." He didn't speak, but that night, Liam crept into his room. "Daddy," she whispered, "can she stay? Just for a little?" He looked into her daughter's eyes, so innocent, so wise, and finally, he nodded. Grace didn't stay in the cabin at first. She rented a small place nearby, helped at the local library, started a garden. She and Ethan spoke warily at first, but slowly their words grew roots. One evening, Liam dragged them both to a picnic by the lake. They sat on the grass as the stars emerged. "Do you ever miss it?" Ethan asked. "The money? The mansion?" She shook her head. "No, I miss peace, and I find it here." He looked at her for a long time. "You're not who I thought you were." "I hope not," she said with a small smile. "I'm still finding out who I am." And so they began again, not with declarations, but with dinners, not with kisses, but with care. Ethan started bringing her books. Grace taught Liam how to plant tomatoes. They went on hikes, on market runs, on walks through fog. And love, patient and quiet, bloomed like wildflowers. One summer day, Grace knelt beside Liam in the garden. The child turned to her and said, "Are you going to be my mommy now?" Grace froze. Ethan, standing behind them, stepped forward. "If she wants to be," he said gently. Grace looked at them, this man, this child, and felt something deep settle in her chest. "I do," she whispered. They married beneath the old oak tree where Grace had first found shelter. Liam held both their hands, and under a sky lit with stars, the same stars that once looked down on a stranger in the rain, a new family began, not built by blood, but by choice, not forged in comfort, but in compassion. And so, a single act of kindness, a door opened in a storm, led to a life no one could have predicted, a love no one had dared to hope for, and a home, finally, where hearts could rest. The storm raged on for 2 more days. Trees bent low under the weight of the wind, and the dirt road leading to Ethan's cabin became nearly impassable. What was supposed to be a one-night stay had stretched into a quiet, unintended retreat. Inside the cabin, time seemed to slow down. In the mornings, Grace helped Liam make scrambled eggs. The little girl always insisted on cracking the eggs herself, making a mess but laughing with unfiltered joy. Grace, once surrounded by butlers and chefs, now found comfort in the simplicity of making breakfast while wearing a borrowed sweater and wool socks too big for her. Ethan watched from a distance, often from the porch or the doorway, pretending to busy himself with chores, but his eyes always wandered to them, Grace and Liam, laughing, chasing one another around the living room, or drawing pictures at the kitchen table. It stirred something old in him, something long buried. One afternoon, Liam tugged on Grace's sleeve and asked her, "Why don't you have a home?" Grace paused, taken aback. She glanced at Ethan, who was sitting nearby, silently whittling a piece of wood. His hand stilled, but he said nothing. "I had one," Grace replied gently, "but it didn't feel like mine anymore."
Did you run away?" A long silence passed. Then Grace nodded. "Yes, sweetie, I did."
Liam tilted her head, curious and kind. "You can stay here. We'll be your home." Ethan's carving knife paused mid-air. He looked up, his eyes meeting Grace's, and something unspoken passed between them. An ache, a question, a warmth. That night, as Ethan set more wood in the fireplace and Grace sipped the herbal tea he had made, a small object fell from her coat pocket, a golden necklace, catching the flickering firelight. Liam noticed it first, picking it up with childlike wonder. "It has your name on it." Ethan looked closer. The necklace was delicate, but unmistakably expensive. And the name engraved was more than just a name. It was Grace Kavanaugh. His expression changed. He excused himself quietly and stepped out onto the porch, the cold biting at his skin more than usual. Grace followed him after a moment, wrapping herself in a blanket. "You know who I am now, don't you?" she said softly. Ethan didn't answer right away. "You're the missing daughter of Charles Kavanaugh. I saw it on the news last month. You vanished days before your wedding to some European count." Grace nodded, her eyes steady. "I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't marry a man chosen for me. I couldn't keep living a life where I didn't get to breathe." She paused, tears building. "I know I lied. I needed a place where no one knew me, where I could be someone, anyone, other than Grace Kavanaugh." He was quiet for a long time. "You should have told me. I was afraid it would ruin this." "This?" he asked, eyes searching. "This peace, this kindness, this little world you and Liam have built." His jaw tightened, emotions battling behind his eyes. "I don't care about your name. I care about the way Liam smiles around you. I care about the fact that for the first time in a long while, this house has laughter in it again." She looked at him, tears falling freely now. "And I care," he added, voice breaking, "that you're hurting and no one seems to notice." The fire inside the cabin crackled, casting long shadows through the windows. And for the first time in years, Ethan reached out, not to fix, not to question, but simply to hold someone who didn't need rescuing, just understanding. The sun returned timidly after the storm, stretching soft light across the hills. The muddy road began to dry, and with it came reality. Peace was never built to last forever, especially for someone like Grace. That afternoon, a car crunched up the gravel path, sleek, black, and foreign against the rugged backdrop of Ethan's world. A man stepped out. He was older, sharply dressed, his silver hair combed back with meticulous care. His presence carried quiet authority and decades of loyalty. "Miss Grace," he said gently as she stepped onto the porch, holding Liam's hand. "Your father has been looking for you. I've been searching for weeks." Ethan stood behind them, arms crossed, unreadable. Grace's breath caught. She wasn't ready. "I'm not going back to that life," she said, her voice shaking. "Tell him that." The butler, Mr. Grayson, nodded solemnly. "I understand, truly, but your disappearance has made headlines. There are consequences if you stay gone. If you wish to live simply, that can be arranged, but not in hiding, not like this." She turned to Ethan, then to Liam, who clung to her leg. The child's eyes were wide and confused. "I don't want to go." Ethan looked down, jaw tight. "Then don't." But they both knew it wasn't that simple. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Grace packed what little she had brought. She kissed Liam's forehead,
held her tighter than ever, and looked once last time at the man who had let her in. "I thought I had run away from everything," she said softly, "but I think I just ran toward what I really needed." Ethan didn't answer. He only nodded once, his eyes glassy, his hands clenched at his sides. He had lost once before. He knew how to let go, but this time it felt like a second chance slipping through his fingers. The car drove off into the dusk, leaving a trail of dust and unspoken words behind. Time passed. The cabin returned to its quiet rhythm. The laughter faded, but not the memory. Ethan worked, chopped wood, fixed the fence. Liam asked about Grace every few days. He always said the same thing, voice gentle. "She's thinking of you too, sweet pea." In a towering penthouse miles away, Grace sat on balconies lined with orchids and glass. The air was perfumed with roses and expectation. Her father welcomed her back with careful formality, more concerned with the family name than her heart. But her thoughts remained on a little cabin, a girl who drew with broken crayons, and a man who spoke more with his silences than most people did with speeches. She wasn't made for this life anymore. 1 year later, Ethan returned from the forest one morning to find something strange. A letter on his porch. No name, no stamp, just a plain white envelope. Inside was a single deed. The cabin had been bought, restored, and gifted back to him. Grace. She had come back, quietly, without fanfare, asking for nothing, just offering a piece of peace in return for what she had once been given. And days later, she returned too. She didn't arrive in a limousine. She didn't wear pearls or designer shoes. Just jeans, a faded sweater, and hope. Ethan opened the door before she could knock. "I didn't come to run," she said.
His eyes searched hers. "Why did you come back?" She smiled. "Because I'm tired of pretending the world I came from is where I belong. I don't want the ballroom. I want your porch, your firewood, your quiet." He hesitated. "I'm not your world, Grace." "No," she said. "You're my choice." But it wasn't his trust she needed most. It was Liam's. That night, as Grace knelt beside the little girl's bed, Liam sat up sleepily. "Are you staying this time?" she asked. Grace's voice wavered. "If you want me to." Liam reached out and took her hand. "Then stay." Ethan repaired the garden gate. Grace baked bread with flour dust on her nose. And Liam, she grew like wildflowers, fearless and full of wonder. They weren't a couple, not yet. No labels, no vows, just the slow, unspoken building of something that felt like home. Every morning, Grace woke before sunrise. She would open the shutters, breathe in the scent of pine and morning dew, and glance over her shoulder. Ethan would be sipping coffee, Liam tangled in blankets on the couch, and for the first time in her life, Grace didn't feel like a guest. She felt kept. One afternoon, she found Ethan rocking Liam to sleep on the porch, the soft hum of an old lullaby floating into the trees. The sunset brushed his shoulders with gold. He looked at Grace, not surprised, not startled, just steady. "She asked me today if you were her mommy now," he said gently. Grace froze. "What did you say?" "I told her that titles don't matter, that love is louder than names." She sat beside him in silence, and they watched the sky darken. A year later, it was a small gathering. No tuxedos, no gold-plated anything, just a hand-woven arch in the woods, a white dress borrowed from a local seamstress, and a little girl carrying wildflowers in her fists. Ethan waited under the arch, dressed in a soft gray shirt, his hair brushed back, nerves in every breath. And then she appeared, barefoot, radiant, not because of the dress, but because of the peace in her eyes. When she reached him, they didn't speak.
They didn't need to. Liam tugged at Ethan's pant leg and offered him a tiny wooden box. Inside was a ring, simple and beautiful, not costly, but chosen. Ethan knelt. "You didn't ask for anything," he said softly. "You came here broken and brought me back to life. You made Liam laugh again. You made me laugh again." He opened the box. "You gave us a home I didn't know we were missing. So now, will you stay? For good?" Grace's breath caught. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times." They didn't need to kiss right away. They just held each other, with Liam wrapping around both their legs and shouting, "We're married now!" Laughter. Tears. Not perfection, but healing. That evening, Ethan lit a fire in the cabin. Grace danced barefoot with Liam to the scratchy sound of old vinyl. Outside, the mountains stood witness, and for the first time in years, no one felt alone. They had no idea what the future held, but they knew this. Family wasn't built on blood or name or wealth. It was built on small choices, like opening a door to a stranger, sharing a meal, letting someone in, and choosing, every day, to stay. Spring arrived in quiet waves, soft rains that bathed the hills, blossoms that pushed their way through winter-hardened soil. The forest surrounding Ethan's cabin began to bloom with wildflowers again, and Liam chased butterflies, with giggles echoing like tiny bells in the morning air. One late afternoon, as the golden light poured over the porch, Ethan was splitting firewood when he heard a car pull up the gravel path. He wiped the sweat from his brow, confused. No one ever came up here without a reason. When he looked up, he saw her. Grace stepped out of the sleek black car, not with the uncertainty of a runaway, but with the quiet strength of someone who had made a decision. Her eyes searched the landscape as if breathing it all in again. The trees, the creek, the porch swing, the memory of laughter in the kitchen. Ethan's heart thudded once, heavy. She looked different now. Not in the way she dressed, though the clothes were simpler, but in how she stood. Her shoulders were back, her chin high, but her eyes were soft, vulnerable, honest. She was no longer running. She had turned around and come back. Liam was the first to see her. "Grace?" she whispered, high and hopeful. Then she ran, arms wide. Grace dropped to her knees and caught her in an embrace that crushed them both with joy. She kissed the girl's forehead over and over, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Ethan remained still. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice rough. Grace rose, gently letting Liam go. "To come home," she said, "if you'll let me." He stared at her for a long time. "You had everything. You left."
"I didn't leave you," she said. "I left a life that never felt like mine. But I needed to make peace with it before I could know what I truly wanted." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And what is that?" She looked him straight in the eyes. "You, Liam, this life." He turned away, his axe splitting another log with a loud crack. "We're from different worlds. I don't care about that anymore. You should." Grace's voice trembled, but she stood her ground. "I know I hurt you by not telling the truth, but I was scared. Not of you, but of what it meant to need someone again." He didn't answer. The silence stretched. Then Liam tugged at his hand. "Daddy, don't be sad." Ethan looked down at his daughter's innocent eyes, then up again at the woman who had brought something back to life inside both of them. His face softened, but the fear remained. "I can't protect you from your world," he said quietly. Grace stepped closer. "You don't have to. I've already chosen this one." They started again, but slowly. Ethan didn't open the door wide, but he didn't close it either. Grace stayed at a nearby cottage she had quietly bought under a local name. She didn't press, didn't force herself into his life again. She visited, helped with the garden, shared meals, braided Liam's hair. And she listened. More than anything, she listened to Ethan's silence, to Liam's stories, to the wind that rustled through the trees. One morning, Ethan showed up with a bag of coffee beans. He said, "I thought you liked this brand." Grace smiled. It wasn't an invitation, but it was a step. In time, those steps became a path. One by one, bricks of mistrust began to fall away. Grace showed that she wasn't here to fix what wasn't broken. She was here to be part of something sacred, and she treated it as such. Liam flourished with Grace around. Her laughter was brighter, her drawings more colorful. She began to call her Millie again, a name made of love and familiarity. And Ethan, he changed too. His smiles came more often. He sat longer at the table. He told stories he hadn't spoken in years. One evening, under a sky full of stars, he brought out an old guitar and played a soft tune. Grace leaned back in the porch chair, her hands folded over her chest. "I didn't know you played." "I haven't in a long time." "Why tonight?" He looked over at her, the moonlight brushing his face. "Because tonight, it doesn't hurt to remember." It wasn't perfect. There were days when old wounds reopened, when Grace's name appeared in a gossip article or someone from her past tried to contact her. There were moments when Ethan still feared she'd wake up and leave again. But Grace never wavered. One night, she showed him the deed to the cabin, his cabin, restored and returned to his name. She said, "This belongs to you. I just wanted to say thank you for saving me, for giving me time to become the kind of person who could come back." Ethan didn't say anything. He just pulled her into a long, quiet hug. From then on, there were no more questions about the future. It was unfolding, step by step. On a summer night, much like the one they first met, Grace, Ethan, and Liam sat together on a worn quilt in the meadow near the cabin. Liam pointed up at the sky. She said, "That one looks like a heart." Ethan chuckled. "You see hearts everywhere." "That's because we are one now," she replied, smiling. Grace reached for Ethan's hand, her fingers warm against his calloused skin. He looked over and saw in her eyes not the heiress who had vanished, but the woman who had chosen this life, deliberately, completely. Grace whispered, "I used to think love was a fire, big, bright, consuming." Ethan turned to her. "And now?" "Now, I think it's a light in a cabin window when you're lost in the rain." He kissed her then, gentle, deep, like the closing of a long open door. Liam lay down on the blanket, her fingers drawing stars in the sky. "Can we stay here forever?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said without hesitation. "This time, we're home." And in that quiet moment, beneath a sky full of stars, surrounded by wildflowers and laughter, a new kind of family was born, not bound by blood, but by choice, by compassion, and by the kind of love that survives every storm.